And welcome back to another video. I am Ramona. This is the Smell of Logic channel where we read Reddit stories, advice, and all these weird things that happen on Reddit. And today's is, what is the nicest thing a stranger has ever done for you? It's supposed to be serious replies only, so let's see. Ready? First one is, paid better attention to me than me while driving. I pulled onto a busy street when I couldn't see if anyone was coming. Fortunately, they saw me and screeched to a halt, ending a few inches from my door. I was in tears, realizing I had been milliseconds away from being T-boned and possibly killed. They didn't scream at me or yell, though I would have understood if they had felt like doing so. They gave a sympathetic nod, and I have never taken a similar gamble since. Dude gave up his seat on a plane for me. It was like something out of a movie, but unlike the movies, it seemed to be a lot more difficult than I would have anticipated. There was a hurricane or tornado or something similar that disrupted a ton of flights. I can't remember the exact circumstances now that it was years ago, but I remember that it was my son's birthday the next day, and I was supposed to connect through whatever the problems were. I lined up as soon as my flight was canceled to rebook, as I always do. Waited for an hour, then the guy at the United told me that there's no way they could get me on any flights that night or the next day. Then maintained that they said they'd be willing to connect through anywhere, or even 3 or 4 whatever connections it took to get home because it was my son's first birthday. They would not help me. I even looked at other airlines and flights on my phone and saw that there were direct flights to my home that night, and I offered to pay for any upgrade fee that it would take, and they still denied me, said there was no room and no possible way to get me home. I was seriously going to cry. I think everyone could see it. Then this effing guy walks up out of nowhere, and I mean nowhere. I don't know where he would have been in the line or why his flight was fine, and the gate to the flight was like the other side of the airport, so seriously like some angel that materialized. And he announces he has a ticket on one of the direct flights, and he'd like to give me his seat. I'm like, no effing way, thank you. And the dude is smiling all happy, and I say I can't accept it, and he says I have to. The guy was an older dude, said he wouldn't have wanted to miss his kid's birthday, etc. I'm just so happy that this stranger guy. Then the United guys say we can't do it. I'm about to lose my shit, but thankfully I didn't have to. Dude straight up tells them how it's going to be, and they are going to get a manager and make it happen for him because he's blank. And I have no idea what he even said. It was like super gold, emerald, elite. And actually, I'm an important person, and you're going to do what I say. So it takes about a half an hour, but they canceled his ticket, let me buy his ticket somehow. I paid some fee, but it wasn't that much, and I didn't remember how it all worked. And then dude bought some other ticket. Thing is, dude wanted to stay a stranger. I asked for his number and said I'd text him a birthday pic, and he said no. I gave the dude the biggest hug and said thanks. I even tried to look him up, but Googling, there was a ton of dudes with his name, and it felt creepy almost immediately. So let's just call him a stranger. But yeah, try to do the same thing for I try to do the same thing, sort of thing, for strangers when I can. And now I think I finally told my last story on Ask Reddit I've ever told before. I'm all out. Offered to buy me, a 16-year-old kid, on a plane for the first time in his life, food when I had no money and was starving. I was in a new city when I didn't speak the language and had no idea what I was doing. I called my ex, she was my ex at the time as well, and she was in another city, but she called some of her friends that I have never met and never spoken to, and they came to take me around the city. I never saw them or spoke to them again. I just think about it if one of my friends called out and said, "Yo, this guy I know in your city and he's an idiot. Can you go help him out?" I probably wouldn't be too eager to help out, but after that experience, I try to be a little more willing to help strangers out. When I was in high school, I worked at a small store that sold purified water outside and some niche Asian products inside. I liked it because it wasn't too busy. I was usually left alone and I got to play music on the stereo. One day, some guy comes in and I'm playing some Peruvian type pan flute music I got from some street vendor. He liked it. I liked it. We chatted about it for a minute or two, and he says he has a CD of this stuff that he'll bring me, and he leaves. I don't think twice about it. He comes back within a week, maybe the next day, even just to drop off this CD. It always struck me because I've always admired people of action, even when it's small stuff. This guy said that he would get me something, and he followed through. Didn't owe me a thing. I don't know where that CD is now, but it is a nice memory that I still have. This happened just a few weeks ago. I wrote a post about it. Tonight's trip to Senor Taco was a little bit different. We walk in, and I notice another table occupied by two girls, similar in age to my own, and their parents. The kids, both theirs and my own, are being a bit loud, but hey, that's why you're at a motel turned Mexican joint, rather than the five-star establishment. But Julie had to turn it up a notch. Dissatisfied with the fact that her small salsa dish was now empty, she flings it to the ground. After picking up the broken pieces and trying to wipe the floor, I sit back down. I sit down and spiral for just a moment. The awful and anxious corner in my mind takes hold, and I am now, surely, the worst parent in the world. I focus my eyes on my half-empty water, and not on the patrons, whose opinions of me now matter all too much. The food arrives, and my children are now too busy eating to cause any more property damage. Quesadillas to the rescue. As we're getting ready to leave, the mom of the other child catches my eye and motions to our combined gaggle of small children, to jokingly ask, "So, cage match after this?" For the first time since the broken salsa dish, I smile. I'll tell her that my money's on my own children, thank you very much. "Oh, but you weren't here when we got here," she tells me. We make small talk for a few minutes before leaving to pay. As she's paying, I thank her for making me feel better about the salsa dish scenario. Without warning, she hugs me and tells me that she wanted to do so earlier. "You looked like you needed a hug." You have no idea. But really, I think she did have an inkling. So, thank you, stranger. Thank you for breaking that mental chain that was taking hold. I'd sure like to pay it forward. The next time I see a mother struggling, because it's just one of those days, I'll be sure to invite her to our makeshift cage match club. I slid off the road in the middle of nowhere, closest town probably 15 to 20 miles away. Nice lady stops. Tell her I've called my insurance and a tow truck is on the way. 2 feet of snow. And she drives off. Anywho, about half an hour later, the lady comes back with a bag full of Taco Bell. That was tremendous. It gave me a hug when I needed one. I was waiting to catch a subway while living abroad, seriously homesick. An older lady who was also waiting smiled at me, then proceeded to tell me that I reminded her of her own son. It turned out that she hadn't seen her son in a while. I then told her that I hadn't seen my mom in quite a while either. We then shared a big heartfelt hug before going our separate ways. Later realized that it had been exactly 6 months to the day that I had been living abroad. A midwife went the extra mile for me while giving birth to my first son. I had anxiety, and the room they put public patient in was so cramped with 13 other moms, which would have resulted in a constant panic attack and unable to rest. So she got me a lovely, semi-private room with just another lady. It was extremely expensive for the room, but I was able to stay there and managed to get decent rest with my newborn. I was driving back from the ER in San Antonio, Texas, in the middle of the night with my toddler son when I got a flat tire. Pulled over to the side, but it was very quiet and very dark part of the interstate. At this time, I didn't know how to change a tire, and it was before cell phones. I had no choice but to start walking, carrying a pretty big toddler who was medicated and out for the count. I had probably gone no more than 100 feet when a big rig truck pulled over. He told me to go sit in his cab to keep warm, as it was winter and being in San Antonio, we weren't prepared for the sudden drop in temperature that night. He would change my tire. I guess I was pretty trusting, but I was also desperate knowing I had a long walk ahead of me on a very cold night, carrying a sick child. Thankfully, he was as good as his word and quickly changed the tire. When I tried to thank him, he just said he hoped someone would do the same for his mother or sister. So I used to have a long commute to school. I'm talking up at 6 a.m. to catch a bus at 6:30, take the bus to a small ferry. Got on the ferry at 8, off at the ferry at 8:30, got to school at 9, left school at 4, got to the ferry at 4:30, caught the ferry at 4:45, got to the other side at 5:15 on the bus at 5:50, got home at 6:30. So all this time I was taking the ferry, I became good friends with a lot of people who took the ferry, and just when I started, a lady started offering me rides up the hill. And she offered me a ride up the hill because she was going the same way, and we became really close, and we were about 6 to 7 others who gave me rides to school now and then. She was also the person who got me into Dexter and more into The Walking Dead. I haven't talked to her in years, and I am sad about it because she was an awesome person. I see one of the people from the ferry every now and then because I work at a golf club, and he comes to golf there every now and then. I miss you guys, ferry crew. One time I was a teenager and I was being stalked by a guy in his 20s, and he followed me to the train. He stood very close to me and made me uncomfortable, but he wasn't touching me. I was young and not outspoken. I don't know what to do, and I was too embarrassed to make a scene. I moved to another area, and he followed. An older guy in his late 30s or early 40s noticed. He was tall and well built. He was going to say something to the guy, but when he looked at me, it's almost like he understood I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. So he shielded me with his body and stood between me and the guy the whole way, looking at the guy like he was going to beat him up. The stalker left after a while. I said thanks to the older guy. He nodded and left too. He walked to the opposite direction to take the train back to the previous stations. I wondered how many stations he rode along with me and that guy. My family and I were eating at a restaurant once, and I noticed a woman sitting across from us eating by herself. None of us thought much of it, except that she seemed to be looking at us. When we got up to pay, they told us our meal had been taken care of. The woman was apparently a teacher. She was touched by how my family all got along and really enjoyed each other, because she doesn't always see that. I've never forgotten what she did, especially on a teacher's salary. She didn't even hang around so that we could thank her. Okay, so one summer my friend told me we could hold signs outside for 6 hours a day for 2 days, and we'd get $120 for it. I agreed because it was summer and we didn't have jobs. I live in Texas, and the weather is either scorching hot or it was pouring rain, no in between. We sat on a busy intersection holding signs. Behind where I was sitting was a long road going into the next city. The first day was balls hot, and eventually the sun was covered by clouds. I turned around, and it was just pure darkness. This effing raining in the city behind me, and it was coming toward me. I had no umbrella, no jacket. My friend was nowhere near me because she sat on the opposite side. I watched the rain come, and eventually it started to pour on me, and I just sat there. This intersection is always busy. It goes all through the city, and it's kind of like a highway, but isn't. The speed limit is 55, but people usually are speeding. A car pulls over, and a man runs out of it, and he runs up to me and gives me his umbrella. I told him it was fine, but he insisted and said for me to keep it, and he hopped into his car, and he left. I won't forget you, handsome man that gave me an orange umbrella. Thank you. One day I was standing at the train station waiting for my train, and a girl walked up and tapped me on the shoulder. I took one of my headphones out and said, "I'm sorry. I'm sure this is weird of me to say, but I just want to tell you that your hair is so cute, and I love it with your glasses. You just have a really great style." It's small, but as someone who has always struggled with liking how I look, it made me really happy and stuck with me. The first trip my wife and I ever took together when we were dating was out of New York City for a weekend. Our plan was to be centralized around Columbia University, but that got botched. So we wound up at the transit terminal needing to find our way across the river into some nothing town in New Jersey where our booked hotel actually was. We must have looked completely out of our element because out of nowhere a homeless man appears, introduces himself as such, told us that we looked lost, and asked if we were where we were trying to get. No sooner had the name of our town left our mouths, he took off to the station like a bat out of hell, ducking and weaving between people and around corners, the two of us hauling ass behind him, trying to keep up. This goes on for about 5 minutes before he stops, points us to a window where we can buy bus tickets that would take us right to our hotel for $4 each. He says his goodbyes and walks off like it was just the thing to do. I had to chase him just to hand him out a bit of cash for, quite frankly, saving the two of us from certain panic. I think about that guy a lot. This was well over 10 years ago, and whatever led him to that place in life, I hope the world's been treating him a bit more kindly. We'd broken down in the middle of nowhere late at night. Didn't have cell phones back then. Neither of us had any real idea even how to troubleshoot why the car was overheating and leaking water, but we knew it wasn't going anywhere. After a few minutes of trying to figure out our options, we were getting ready to just walk to the nearest gas station about 5 miles away to call for help. Just before we did, a guy in a BMW pulls up. He passed us before and saw that we were stuck. He asked what the issue was, and we told him. He looked the car over and figured out what the issue was. Freeze out plugs blew. He said, "Okay guys, I'll be right back." Then he drives off. A few minutes later, he shows up with a bucket of water and filled up the radio, then told us to get to the gas station with due haste. He followed us there, then waited with us until my father-in-law showed up, brushed off our thanks for the help, and refused payment for the bucket and the gas he used, not to mention his time. So next time you curse out that BMW driver for merging without signaling, remember, some of them are not assholes. Went to Orlando with some friends for spring break about 10 years ago. We were just out of money by the end of the week, and we met this older couple in a bar who were going to Universal the next day. They felt bad that we'd come all this way from Ontario and weren't going to make it to one of the big theme parks, so they invited us along, bought us tickets and everything. It was totally unexpected and just so sweet. My dad dropped my brother and I off at the local museum, IMAX movie theater, to watch some educational film. When we went to buy tickets, they said that we needed a guardian with us. We both must have been about 12 years old or younger. We asked an older couple if we could use their phone to call our dad and have him come back, but when they asked about our situation, they just bought us the tickets and invited us to watch the movie with them. They were so sweet, and I remember the woman grabbing my hand when there was a moment of surprise during the movie. It feels silly to look back so fondly on spending an afternoon with this couple, watching a Titanic documentary, but it makes me smile, and I hope that they are doing well. I passed out on the street and had a concussion. A woman called the ambulance and said they didn't have a free ambulance to take me to the hospital. She decided to take me in her car to a private hospital as the public hospital was crowded. My boyfriend and I walked into a Lululemon just to window shop. We were just browsing to see what size he was for the upcoming Christmas, so that I could get him some clothes. The nice girls in there greeted us and were telling us the specials and whatnot. I politely said, "Oh, thank you for the information. We're pinching our pennies right now. We're about to move out of state, so we're just browsing for today." So he went to the back to start trying on clothes. He's coming out and everything fits him so nicely. While he's trying on clothes, we start talking about life. How he served in the Marines, where we were headed, reasons why, all that stuff. He comes out and says, "Man, I wish we could afford these right now. I love all these clothes." The girl that works there said, "You like those shorts, huh?" And she glances at her manager across the room. I see her nod, and the girl turns to my boyfriend and says, "Have them, they're yours." I said, "Wait, what? Are you serious?" She said, "Absolutely serious. Go ahead and pick out a shirt, too." I started to tear up. "Are you kidding me? Is this real life?" I asked. She said, "Yes. Do you want something? Shirts? A nice pair of yoga pants?" I said, "If you're offering them, yes, absolutely." So I picked out some really cute pants. I gave her and her manager a hug and graciously thanked them. I was in tears, and I kept saying, "I wish I could afford something right now, because I feel bad." The manager says, "Don't feel bad. It is our pleasure, and I thank you for serving this country." I was floored. If you're familiar with Lululemon, it's an expensive brand. We walked out of that store with $250 worth of clothes, for free. Did not spend a penny in there. I still can't believe that happened to us, and it came at a time when things were extremely stressful as well. I tell everyone about that company now. They are truly amazing. When I was 19, I took my dog to Dairy Queen. I was really depressed. I just found my dog, and she was helping me a lot. I figured something sweet would be nice, even though I really couldn't afford it. I made $200 every 2 weeks and had student loans, a car insurance, groceries, and a load of other things I needed. I ordered, and while waiting in line, really contemplating driving away because I wasn't sure how far back a blizzard and a small cup of soft serve would set me back. I pulled out my card, and the kid goes, "Oh no, the guy ahead of you paid for you. You're good to go here." And she handed me my stuff. I almost cried then and there. For the first time, a stranger did something like that for me. I know it was just $10 tab, but that gentleman had no idea what I was going through. He had no idea the dog beside me was the only thing keeping me from killing myself. He didn't know how miserable I was. That small act made me happier than I had been in weeks, maybe months. I try to do as many good deeds as I can because of him. You never know how much something small can mean. Ice cream was my dinner that night, and things finally seemed like the world wasn't so bad anymore. I still think about it and smile sometimes. I wish I could thank him. Edit. Oh my gosh, thank you, friend, for the gold. It got a lot bigger than I would have thought it would. My dog and I are doing much better now, for anyone that was wondering. She's still absolutely spoiled, and rightfully so. Once when I was a teenager, some dude mentioned quietly, and not obviously, that I had my shirt tucked into my underwear. Made sure I was all right, gave me a ride to a store, and made sure I got home all right. A few years ago, back during my first time through college, I lived in an apartment in Mesa, Arizona, which was in the Phoenix Valley, aka a frickin' desert. One day, I realized that, oh crap, I need to pay my rent today. Well, the only way I could pay my rent at the time was through a money order. Normally, I'd stop at a store on the way home from school, but my usual ride at the time had to be somewhere, so he dropped me off at home. I was pretty sure a gas station just a few miles away did money orders, and since I didn't have enough cash at that time for a bus, I decided to walk to the gas station. At around noon on a rather hot sunny day in July, without any water in the desert, if memory serves, it was like 100 degrees Fahrenheit and dry as heck. Anyway, I start my truck to the gas station, but I start feeling a bit faint and ill within the first block, so I go into the nearby Target that I knew had a water fountain and drank a little water. Whilst there, I checked to make sure they didn't do money orders, which they didn't, so I continued onward. I was still feeling a bit overheated and woozy, but I brushed it off. I walk for about 2 blocks and I'm starting to feel a little dizzy, but I can see my destination on the opposite corner of a busy cross street. So I would have to cross the road twice, and I thought, no big deal, I'll just rest in the air-conditioned gas station for a few minutes. So once the light hits me, I start to cross. But about halfway across the street, everything went black, and the next thing I knew, I was lying on the blacktop. Luckily, I wasn't out for very long. I think my collision with the street brought me back to consciousness. Anyway, I stumbled to my feet and I crossed the street, and the other light turned on pretty quick, so I got to the gas station quickly. There I went straight to the bathroom and drank some water straight from the sink and sat on the floor. Shortly after, a woman, let's call her Rose because I think that's what she said her name was, and a younger girl, who I learned later was her niece, come in and asked me if I'm all right, as they'd seen me pass out on the street. That alone I thought was nice, and I thanked them for their concern. Then they insisted that I get me some water and a Gatorade, which I had a little extra money at the time, and I would have refused, so that was another nice thing. Anyhow, now I don't feel like passing out. I get in line for my money order. Unfortunately, I learned that I couldn't get a money order via my debit card there, and that more than bummed me out. Then, after hearing my plight, Rose offered to drive me to a nearby store where they knew they would take my card for a money order. Now, she had already been so nice to me, and now she was offering to give a complete stranger a ride. Normally, due to a combination of anxiety and not wanting to be a burden, I would have declined. However, I really needed to get this money order in order to pay my rent on time, so I accepted. And Rose took me to the store, I got my money order, and then she took me back to my apartment, going completely out of her way. It kind of renewed my faith in humanity, to be honest, and reminded me that there really are truly selfless people out there that are willing to help a complete stranger with giving them a hand. The alternator on my car went while I was driving on a very busy highway, and a panic attack was setting in. 2 strangers pulled over with quickness and helped me push my car off the highway to a side street for safety. I never got their names, but I am forever grateful. There are so many, but the one that I'll always remember was during my first job. I was on break, so I went to get something to eat. I ordered the food thinking I had enough money to cover it, but I was short like $3 or $4. This lady that was in line basically told me to give whatever amount I had, and she'd cover the missing amount. I was maybe 19 then, and completely speechless. Why would she do that? I'm a no one. Well, there you go. There's a little hopeful, helpful, positive stuff going on in the world. Just to brighten your day, hopefully. I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. If you did, maybe leave a like or a comment, or subscribe to my channel, or share this video or one of the many others on the channel with somebody you like or don't like or care about or whatever. But anyway, thanks for listening and watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.